athletes to entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of an Alumni Direct, where we've created a centralized platform for athletes to network and connect with their fellow athletes and other alumni and tap into resources to help them in career, health, financial. But this show is all about, we talk to former collegiate and professional athletes about their transition out of sports into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And it's all about teaching aspiring athletes that there's life after sports. And I'm so excited today. This is a very special episode. This is our 100th episode, and it's amazing the different people that we've had on, and we want to do something really special today. And we're going to kind of flip the script. So today I have on with us Ryan Finkelstein. Name sounds familiar? Yeah, he's my son, but Ryan is actually a great podcaster. He's done over 1,300 episodes of his podcast, Locked On Mets, and other ones as well. And he's kind of been my inspiration on podcasts. How you doing today, Ryan?
Doing great. Excited to talk about your journey here as you've started Alumni Direct and this podcast. And I've always followed your footsteps when it comes to podcasting. You followed mine a little bit over the last couple of years here. I'm very honored to be your guest for the 100th episode of your show. It's a big first milestone here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And like I said, we're going to flip the script. So now I get to be the athlete that gets interviewed. So Ryan, take it away.
All right. So, first things first, how did sports shape you growing up? I know it's obviously always been a big part of, our life, father and son. But before I was around, when you were a kid growing up, how was sports a central figure in your life?
Well, I always, I played the typical sports. I played Little League baseball and all that. And I was always kind of the underdog. I was okay. I wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. So I just, I always tried hard and worked hard. But then when I got into high school, I started running. I ran track and cross country in high school and ultimately in college. And being a long distance runner, it takes a lot of perseverance, hard work, and a lot of the things that we talk about in these episodes about that athlete skill set. And in running, just like the other sports, I was a little bit of an underdog. I ran varsity, but I wasn't one of the top runners on the team. But I was very driven. And I kind of looked at myself. Rocky is one of my favorite movies of all time. All of the Rockies, maybe some not as good as the others, but Rocky was something that I identify with as the underdog. And I always fought to prove people wrong and basically prove to myself that I could do things and achieve goals. And I think it just played a major part in my upbringing.
Is there a race in particular, if you could come back and think to it, but was there a time in high school, maybe it was the first time you got an opportunity to run a race or something like that, where you kind of got that chance, you were able to kind of show some people all the work that you put in, how it had paid off?
Yeah, I would say there was a couple times in cross country where some guys had bad races or were hurt, and just really I excelled. I had a great race. I remember too at one time in track, I used to run the mile and the 2 mile, and we had all of our guys ran, and we had a really good team. And I was able to run a 4:37, which I broke 4:40. And what was inspirational about that is 7 or 8 of us did it. But I didn't want to be the one that didn't do it. So I guess I was kind of driven to do that. But yeah, I always fought to get to that next, catch up to that next runner and do everything I can to help the team win.
I can't even imagine running a mile in less than 5 minutes. I can barely get one under 10. So that's really insane to think about. I know, your journey through high school track took you to college first at Albright, and then eventually you walked on at Delaware. So kind of go through that part of your journey. First, the decision to go to Albright, and then why you went to the bigger school, and then that process of walking on, I'm sure was very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So Albright College, our high school track coach and cross country coach, everybody does is a shout out to Coach Bob Dingle, and he was our coach, and he went to Albright College, and he encouraged us to go there. So myself and my best friend and one of our other friends, the three of us went there. And you don't get scholarships to Division III schools, but they're called grants. And so I got a grant kind of to run. So, but it's too small for me. I was there for a year, and I did pretty well. I was, like high school, I was one of the varsity runners, not the top varsity runner, but the college just wasn't for me. It was too small, and I wanted a better experience. So I transferred to University of Delaware, and it was ultimately a great experience at Delaware. But like you mentioned, as a walk-on, I had to walk on varsity. It was my sophomore year when I was there, and didn't make it until the end of the year, end of the season, when I finally got a shot to do varsity. So again, it was that adversity and kind of fighting from being a JV runner ultimately to get an opportunity to be varsity.
So I don't think we've ever talked about this. So I'm kind of curious what that process was like before you actually made it. Are you just you're allowed to practice with the team and you're showing up and you're going through all of the workouts to try to prove yourself, but eventually, whether it's another guy gets hurt or however it happens, you end up getting that opportunity to start running and being part of the team?
No, you're still running and practicing, yeah. But you do. They have other races. So I mean, they have races where when you run typically a varsity race, the seven runners are identified as your varsity runners. But there were some bigger races where we had opportunities to run, and then if not, there was usually you're running against other schools. So other schools, same thing. They've got seven guys running varsity, but then they've got other guys JV that you're competing against.
Gotcha. So then you make the team. What was it like to run at that level for the time you did at Delaware?
It was good. I had a good time doing it, but unfortunately for me, uh, I got hurt towards the end of my cross country season and into the spring, and I just at the time I hurt my knee, and I went to University of Pennsylvania. The medical doctors there that actually work with the Phillies and the Eagles, Sixers, and all that. And, had a knee injury that it was something I could definitely recover from, but at that point I just realized that there were other things that I wanted to do in my life, and I wanted to be able to, when I grew up to be, when I not when I grew up, but I mean when I got older and had kids like you, that I wanted to be able to run around and play sports with them. So I decided my sophomore year that that I wasn't going to continue on competitively in college.
So what was that transition like? Because I was listening to another podcast recently where JJ Redick, NBA player, was talking about transitioning out of the NBA, and he said that athletes. Well, I think actually Dan Levitard said it too. He was hosting the show. He describes it as an athlete has two deaths: their actual death, and then the death of their athletic career. It's so much of how we identify ourselves as athletes. When you actually have to come to that realization that it's over, it is a really big transition in your life. So, you were running track for all through high school, first couple of years of college. It was a huge part of your life. How did you get out of that competitive mode, and how did you find kind of the next thing to challenge yourself when it came to your pursuits beyond athletics?
I think for me, it just because I wasn't an elite runner, I knew I wasn't going to be Olympic bound or like a star in college. That it wasn't as hard of a transition, and I talk about this on with various athletes on my other podcasts. But I think a lot of athletes, to your point, do identify as themselves as the sport. So they look at themselves and it might be, hey, I'm Ryan the baseball player, Rob the runner. It could be Bill the football player, Susie the swimmer. But for me, because I wasn't an elite athlete, it wasn't as much of a challenge for the transition. So I was ready to kind of continue on with my education and get my degree, do all the probably some of the fun things that I missed because when you are participating in athletics at a collegiate level, there is a lot of hard work associated to it and a lot of time commitment. So once out of it, you have a little more time to maybe pursue some other things, have a little fun doing different things. So I kind of looked at that, and I always talk about for me, and Ryan's going to appreciate this. You'll appreciate this one. My harder transition was when I was coaching. So when I coached sports, Ryan played baseball, football, all the different sports, but ultimately baseball was a sport, and I managed little league teams and travel baseball teams, and got to spend a lot of time when you're in South Florida. 250 days out of the year you're playing, and Ryan's a testament to it, and a lot of hard work that goes into that. And I think the time that happened when I transitioned out of coaching and when Ryan was no longer playing sports, that was a really hard and difficult transition for me. It's funny when I talk about it, think back to it. So I'm sure you can appreciate that. Ryan, you went through your own transition out of playing sports, but for me, it was when you were done. It was really tough.
Yeah, there's such a long time where that was our thing, and that was such an important every weekend was spent on a baseball field, and when that ended, it was tough for me too, trying to figure out what came next. And it took me a while to get where I'm at now, where I did figure out what's next. When you were back in school, going through the process of transitioning, I know you worked with Vest. Can you go through some of the other things you did in school surrounding sports? I know there was other things that you were able to do beyond just running track.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you mentioned Vest Johnson, and Vest was a phenomenal mentor to not only me, to literally thousands of athletes at the University of Delaware. And he kind of took me under his wing because I wanted to get into some type of a sports management career, which back then when I was going to school, there weren't undergrad degrees in it. Ultimately, there were a couple of grad schools that you can go to, or you can pay your dues and work at agencies. But I was able to, with Vest's help, work with the football team and the basketball team at Delaware and come up with some different events, a Greek night and the student night and some of the things that I was able to do. So it kind of got ingrained in some of the other sports. I mean, I've always been an avid sports fan, love sports, especially baseball and football. But it gave me an opportunity to kind of work in sports when I was still in college.
And so when you were working, in sports and you were kind of ingrained in that in college, was there any education that you saw for athletes at the time at Delaware on how to transition out of sports when you were in school?
Not really. I think yeah, I think there's always, maybe there might have been some like classes and workshops and things like that, but it wasn't something that I think when you're in the sports, I think the coaches and all that, they're more concerned. They're concerned about the athletes, but about winning and all field. That's the coaches are getting paid for that. The athletes are training, working hard to compete. So I don't think it was as much back then. There wasn't, but I think today there's a lot more. So in a lot of the conversations that I have now with other athletes, some that are newer that just recently graduated, but a lot of the older athletes like myself, schools are starting to make more of an effort to help out the athletes in their transition. I think a lot of it's still maybe that 1 day workshop where they have support there, but it's also up to the athlete to go into it. I think it's if it became something that was more mandatory, whether it's a 4 week workshop or whether it's a semester, it might go a longer way. And the other thing that I always talk about as well is that besides the transition of the athlete from college sports, once they're out, they're alumni, and I think a lot of alumni still struggle, whether it's alumni from being a college athlete, or alumni from being, fortunate if you're a professional athlete, but struggle in that transition. And I think there's a need there to not only help the current student athletes, but also the alumni athletes too.
So with that, how do we help? What advice would you give athletes who are trying to transition? Where can they seek that help, and what are some steps they can take to sort of aid them as they start their transition out of sports into entrepreneurship or just their career beyond the field?
I think the biggest thing is there's people out there that want to help and support and kind of reach them. And I know we'll probably talk about, maybe one of the next questions, but just really building your network and connecting with people that want to help you. I think if you were, like I said, now I think there's probably more help at the school. So definitely as an athlete, reach out. And if there are some issues where you might be struggling in performance or mental health, don't feel bad about it, because people are there to help you, and I think you need to reach out to either the people at the school, or they can guide you to other people, and then align yourself just with with other athletes on your team, and just other teams in other sports. I mean, I think if um, you can identify other athletes, whether you're baseball, football, basketball, runner, it doesn't really matter. You all are going through similar type things, so kind of reach out to that group, and as a support group even, and do those kind of things. And once you're out of school, there's other things too. I think once you get into, if it is corporate America or as an entrepreneurship, there's people there along the way too. I think you want to have the game plan. A lot of people just, especially the ones that are really ingrained and hoping to get to professional level, they might not have a plan of what's next. I think as a runner and some of these other sports that might not be as prominent as football, baseball, basketball, if there's not a professional level per se, or they realize they're not going to be going at that level, it makes it a little bit easier to start planning and game planning, getting whether it's getting internships or just really getting to know people that can help you in that next phase of your life.
Yeah, you speak there about networking and connecting, and I know, after running and after school, you got into sales, so that's always been a big part of what you've done. But also at a certain point, you became the president of the University of Delaware Alumni Club around here too. So, what did that experience being the president of the club sort of teach you about that phase of it, of trying to connect, the alumni that came before you to the next generation ahead? How did you, be part of kind of bridging that gap between generations and just connecting all these different people that ultimately can help each other?
Yeah, I think for me, being an alumni, yeah, everybody looks at it differently, but especially for me, being in South Florida and being away from the University of Delaware, 1,200 miles away, there's just a stronger affinity relationship. So when I see University of Delaware person, it's just like, how can I help? The first thing is that, you might not know the person, they might not be the greatest person, but your first inclination is that, hey, they went to the same school, and so we have things in common. Being far away, you're also okay. We'll have the commonality of maybe knowing the same places there, maybe growing up in the same area, being in the Northeast. So there's that connection. But being in sales and business, we always look for common ground, and so that alumni relationship, with our alumni club, is very social. But there's a bunch of us that were in businesses, and we wanted to leverage that alumni relationship and help each other with our businesses. So we started doing different things. We had different local business events, where we got together. We had lunches, dinners, breakfasts, whatever it was, where as fellow alumni, we can do things together and help each other out. And I think that's really important. I think for any alumni groups out there, doing the same thing. So we kind of, we like the social aspects of it, but we want to, look at it from a business perspective too, helping each other. And I think, whether it's, college alumni, whether it's alumni from maybe businesses that people work with. I mean, I was a long time I started with a company called Wallace Computer Services, ultimately became R. Donnelly, but having those relationships over the years, I mean, you have things in common. So I think it was important to do that, and then I think it becomes easier to network. A lot of people are concerned and scared with networking, and it's a challenge. I mean, you laugh all the time watching me and my family, the rest of the family laughs at just how I interact with other people. But I make it fun, and I think I'm all about helping other people and paying it forward. And so that experience of being the president of Alumni Club, and to your point, kind of bridging the gap even within the ages. I mean, you kind of learn along the way. Let me take somebody under my wing and help them. A lot of people did it for me, and then now I try to do the same thing for them. So as an older alumni helping younger alumni, it's been real important to me.
And that sort of led to the beginning of Alumni Direct. It is trying to create a platform that it could accomplish what you guys were doing with that alumni club, but on a grander scale. So why don't you talk about how you came up with Alumni Direct and what that journey's been like here?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we wanted to have a place where people can go and make it easy to network and connect. And there's things out there. There's sites out there. There's the LinkedIn's of the world, the Facebook, and things that are really good. And people go out there, but um, we wanted to be more specialized, just geared towards alumni, because we saw that affinity relationship specific to alumni. So we didn't feel there was something out there like that. There are different schools. The schools do have alumni relation sites and all that, but we wanted to have that kind of third party neutral site where people can go and interact, with fellow alumni, and just make it easier, because sometimes like you can go on some of these platforms and say, okay, hey, I'm a University of Delaware alumni, let's connect. And people connect, and somebody put it best to me. It's kind of like handing a business card, like, okay, great, we're connected now. But unless you have that skill set to network and connect, which fortunately for me is something is part of I guess my superpower. Sometimes people might say, but it's hard, and so we want to make it easy. So if you know that you're going to this community center where you have fellow alumni, I think it makes it a little bit easier to interact with each other. And so we saw that and saw an opportunity to create something like that. So that's what we've done. We've created a centralized platform with various college community centers. But we've also, over the last year or so, kind of shifted our focus and really gearing in on athletes.
I know a big part of that has been this show, Athletes to Entrepreneurs, and this is the 100th episode of the show, which is crazy to me. Because I remember when you just started it. So what was the genesis of deciding, along with Alumni Direct, hey, let's start a podcast. Let's use that as another bridge to connect with people. And how has this entire experience been through now 100 episodes?
I was kind of jealous because you're doing all these podcasts. You started doing podcasts with my brother. You started doing other things, but this whole Met podcast, and I'm a big Met fandom. So I'm one of Ryan's number one listeners on Locked On Mets. But I saw that and like what you were doing with podcasts, and just saw a need. I started getting involved with some various athlete groups, and just realizing that there is a major issue today with athletes transitioning out of sports, whether it's from a mental health perspective, financial literacy. And I really wanted to make an impact, and just looked out like, what can I do to help in this situation? Obviously, we've got this platform, Alumni Direct, which can be that conduit platform, but what other ways can I get out there and make a difference and kind of show what the problem is and how we can help others? And that was kind of the genesis of it. I started talking to some different people. I listened to some other podcasts where people were talking to other athletes about their transition out of sports and some of the struggles. And so as I listened to them, I said, I like this lane of helping athletes, and let's start this podcast. And just got the idea of, hey, I can interview former athletes that played college, and some who are fortunate enough to play professional, but talk to them about their journey and trying to identify those athletes that have had success. A lot of them have struggled too when they first got out, but they became successful entrepreneurs or business leaders. And so I saw that and saw this opportunity that if I can interview them and talk to them and kind of bring back those the messages and the things that they learned over time, that other athletes that are struggling, they can identify with their fellow athletes. And so if they can hear this message, maybe it will inspire them that, hey, there is life after sports. I mean, when you're done, you might still have another 20, 30, 40 years, let's say, in the business world or whatever you might be doing. And so if we can get you out of that rut that you might be in, it can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think the podcast medium in general it's a very personal medium. Where we're talking to people are tuning in, and it's a great way to get a positive message across. And I think that's what you've accomplished here. And it's really amazing. When I talk to you and you're like, yeah, I was just talking to an Olympic athlete the other day, or I just had my another NFL player on. How cool has that been for you to, for one, have reached out to all these people and get them on the show, and to just hear so many different stories from so many different backgrounds over the past, how long has it been? 2 years now? Year and a half?
A little about a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah. So what's that whole experience been to, again, have gotten that many different types of guests on, and guests that have really reached the absolute pinnacle in the sports world?
It's been great. I mean, it's one thing that's kind of resonated with me is just there is definitely a commonality amongst athletes, regardless of what sport they played. And so it has been interesting, like you said, just interviewing whether it was college wrestlers, handball players, professional windsurfers, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA basketball players, hockey, swimmers, Olympians. Yeah, it's hearing their stories and some of the adversities that they might have faced growing up, and just how they got through them, and us all kind of sharing that mission of we want to help other athletes. And I think that everyone has that common thing, and it's just every episode, while I'm talking to them, and then when I'm done and I listen to that recording, I always I call them great nuggets of just information that I think are so valuable that can really help athletes out, and people in general. I mean, they just, some of their stories. I mean, it is cool to. I haven't had any like super famous people, but you know what? A lot of these people, in their own rights, are probably a lot more famous than some of these athletes out there that have had success, because the success that they've had in their careers in business leadership. I mean, talking about college baseball players, golfers turn to CEOs, or football players turn to CEOs, or swimmers, starting foundations. I mean, making so much of an impact, and it's just really cool hearing their stories, and sharing them with other people. I mean, and then the one thing that I've got a lot out of it too is that most of them have that kindred spirit and wanting to help others, and we're kind of aligned in what we're doing, and a lot of them do like, just like the whole aspect of the podcast, and they like the fact that, what we're trying to do at Alumni Direct to help athletes out. It's something that really resonates with them, and they want to continue. And so I've built a lot of great relationships as well. So, some of my podcast guests have become good friends, and we've got a mission to help others. And, they become resource partners with Alumni Direct, and, friendships that I'm developing that will continue for many years.
I've always been in awe of how you're able to form those friendships, because it's not my nature to be as outgoing as you are. So I think this is the perfect show and platform for you. Anything else that you want to share here before we close, as far as what 100 means to you, as you look towards the next 100, and who knows, maybe one day we'll get up to 1,000, like I got to recently here too, over with Locked On Mets.
Yeah, it's special because, a lot of times in life, like people talk about, you hear, well, podcasts, for example. I mean, I don't know what the magic number is. I think maybe whether it's once you get past 10 or 20, but a lot of people say, wow, getting to 100, that's a big, a feat to get to. And so it's exciting to get to that, and just knowing that all these, podcast guest athletes that I've had on, I'm so appreciative of them for joining each of these episodes, and sharing their message. And, we really want to get more viewers, across YouTube, and across the various listeners across the podcast networks. Is I truly believe there can be a positive impact. I mean, I always say if I can help just one person, but I think we could really help many. So it's great to get to the 100. Definitely want to continue getting to more. I mean, it's I love, finding out who's next and what they do, and we've been excited. We've had PR agencies and ad agencies reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, we think our CEO or our athlete would be great on your podcast," and that's special too. That people are recognizing us and seeing us. I mean, it was kind of cool going on, Googling, top alumni podcasts, and seeing Alumni Direct come up as one of the top podcasts. So it's a testament to continuing to work hard, and, I appreciate all the people on my team that help out, and help me to edit, and put these episodes out across our social media. We try to do every day, putting out different things. We really want to have a positive impact on people. So we'll continue to do this. I also, because of this whole podcasting bug I got into another podcast as well. We have another one I do called NIL for You, and a shout out to my co-host Trent Clark. And with that one, it's all things NIL, but we really focus in on the education, and NIL is a whole nother topic for another day, but I encourage people to watch that one too. But it's been fun. It's really been fun doing these, and kudos to you for all the amazing episodes that you put out every day. To my audience here that I do, like Ryan always talks about his number one fan and listener, me, and brings a tear to my eye, because just really proud of his accomplishments, of what he's done. And, I just want to do the same thing. I want to really help as many people as I can, and help entertain them too.
Well, as people can look on YouTube if they're watching and see my background right behind my shoulder, I got a picture that's always up of it's my dad, and I'm actually wearing a Marlins jersey. So I don't say that on the Locked On Mets podcast. I let them know that. I don't know why he had me in a Marlins shirt, but I'm in a Marlins shirt. I have some chocolate chip cookie on my lip, but it's one of my favorite pictures of me and my dad when I was a little kid, and it's been behind me ever since I moved into this apartment. In the camera shot is going to stay behind me as I keep doing it, because that's always my inspiration. So it's been an awesome journey for me in the podcasting space. I'm glad that you're now in this space as well. And I'm looking forward to the next 100 episodes of Athletes to Entrepreneurs. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find all the stuff that you guys are doing?
Absolutely. Thank you. And you can find us on alumnidirect.com. And if you go to Alumni Direct's YouTube channels where you can find and watch the podcast, you can also across all the podcast networks. And we are on sportspreneur.com, which is a great network. And they've got multiple other podcasts and great co-hosts or hosts on those. So I encourage people to go out to sportspreneur.com and not only listen to ours, but do that. And then you can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook and X and TikTok and Instagram, all the places. And we, like I said, we really want to impact and help as many athletes. So I encourage you to reach out. And we love doing this. And thank you so much, Ryan, for your inspiration and to getting into the podcast and for doing this special episode with me. And looking forward to the next one. One of my true best friends in life, my son. So thank you, everybody, and look forward to the next episode of Athletes Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey.